Other temples were homes away from home, said Prabhupada, but Vrindavan was home. Those who wished to live there with him, however, had to pass the test of his constant scrutiny and sharp criticism. They had to accept the hard work and austerity, and special austerities meant special blessings. When a devotee asked to be excused from his duties in Vrindavan to operate a farm in the West, Prabhupada said that even opening 20 farms would not be as important as remaining in Vrindavan. Those who persevered eventually began to see all difficulties as nectar, as he has expressed by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. When difficulties arise in service, I find them sources of happiness. On Radhashrami, Srila Prabhupada laid the cornerstone for a large Gurukul building adjacent to the Krishna Balaram Mandir. He said that when it was built, the devotees should accommodate 500 students there from all around the world. Through the gorgeous temple, the guest house, and soon the Gurukul, Srila Prabhupada intended to draw as many people as possible to the shelter of Krishna in Vrindavan. For this end, he was willing to sacrifice everything, even his peaceful writing. And for this end, he also demanded his disciples to sacrifice. Constant travel, Srila Prabhupada said, was becoming more and more inconvenient. One reason for his return to India. But he was by no means stopping. Unless he traveled, his movement could not remain vital and healthy. So he was prepared, despite inconvenience, to continue touring. Disciples never stopped inviting him to travel, and recently Pushta Krishna Swami had asked him to come to South Africa. When Srila Prabhupada agreed, Pushta Krishna had quickly arranged 10 festivals and other engagements in Durban, Johannesburg, covering a period of 3 weeks in October. Devotees on the predominantly Hindu island of Mauritius had also requested Prabhupada to visit, mentioning that the Prime Minister wanted to meet him. Prabhupada agreed. Leaving Vrindavan, making brief stops in Delhi, Ahmedabad, and Bombay, he was off to Africa. Mauritius, October 1st, 1975. Relieved of management, Prabhupada was freer now to lecture to interested gatherings. Reception by the press and government ministers in Mauritius was good, but most public questions reflected a lack of sincere interest in spiritual knowledge. Is it necessary to be vegetarian? Is the soul locked in the third eye? You seem dogmatic. Is there any doubt in your philosophy? Nonetheless, people were respectful and considered Srila Prabhupada an important leader and spiritual authority. He remained there a week. Durban, October 5th. This was Prabhupada's first visit to South Africa. For 2 years, the devotees had been trying to get him a visa, but the government was wary of foreign missionaries. The bureaucratic delays, therefore, had taken months. The devotees had even had to send copies of Prabhupada's books for the government officials to review. Every night for a week, Srila Prabhupada delivered public lectures to crowds of at least 1,000, mostly Hindus, but also many whites. After Prabhupada's lecture at the University of Durban, Westworld, a member of the faculty tried to discredit the lecture by stating, well, this is just a Hindu concept. Repeatedly, Srila Prabhupada tried explaining how the principles of Krishna consciousness were universal and scientific, but the man kept replying that it was Hindu culture. Dr. S.P. Oliver, rector of the university, sympathized with Srila Prabhupada's presentation. And stayed afterward to speak at length with him. I think you are quite right, Dr. Oliver began, but very few people tonight got the point you were trying to make, that this is a scientific reality. Johannesburg, October 12th, Srila Prabhupada's arrival at the Johannesburg airport was culturally extraordinary for South Africa. White men bowing down before an Indian. The devotees had borrowed a yellow Mercedes and had parked it in a spot reserved for state ministers and other dignitaries. No one objected. As Srila Prabhupada arrived, devotees threw flower petals. Some young European onlookers bowed down, and the police, impressed by all the protocols, saluted Srila Prabhupada and respectfully opened the door to his Mercedes. As in Durban, Prabhupada's lectures were well attended. He was keen to have his books sold during these programs, and he would go to the book booths and ask his disciples, "Are you buying the books? Are they buying the books?" He was concerned that the Europeans, not just the Hindus, buy the books. Prabhupada spoke strongly against racial discrimination. But unlike Mahatma Gandhi, who had been imprisoned in South Africa for his outspoken views, Prabhupada spoke on the authority of scripture. "What is this black white business?" he said. "It is nonsense. It is the bodily conception of life." In South Africa, such statements would ordinarily have been considered volatile politics. Yet everyone appreciated Srila Prabhupada because he spoke on a purely spiritual level. One of Prabhupada's disciples in Africa, Riddha, asked privately how to deal with racial issues in Johannesburg. The only solution, Prabhupada said, was mass Harinam Sankirtan. When Riddha asked about starting a farm community, Prabhupada replied, "Don't be so eager to move out to the country. The preaching is in the cities." He said he was very pleased with what his disciples had done in South Africa within such a short time. While Prabhupada was in Johannesburg, Rameshwar and company fulfilled their promise and reached him with copies of both volumes of the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada took the books with him to his lecture at one university and quoted from them, speaking on Rishabhadev's instructions, beginning with the verse in which Rishabhadev advises his sons not to live for sense gratification. Mauritius, October 24th. Prabhupada had returned to meet with the Prime Minister. As a friendly gesture, the Prime Minister had sent a chauffeured car for Srila Prabhupada's use in Mauritius. One day, Prabhupada was leaving to take a ride in the countryside. But as he was about to enter the car on the right side, Pushta Krishna Swami suggested, "Srila Prabhupada, come to the other side, it's safer." And Prabhupada complied. For half an hour, they rode through beautiful countryside, past sugarcane fields, mountains, and the ocean. At one point, they stopped and walked along a cliff beside the sea. When they returned, Brahmananda Swami opened the right side door and Prabhupada said, "No, the other side is safer," just as Pushta Krishna had previously suggested. A few minutes later, as Prabhupada's black Citroen was rounding a curve, a Volkswagen suddenly appeared heading towards them in the same lane. Prabhupada was sitting behind Pushta Krishna and Brahmananda was seated behind the driver. The moment before the Volkswagen had appeared, Srila Prabhupada had sat up cross-legged, planting his cane against the floor of the car to support himself. As the Volkswagen rushed towards them, the chauffeur braked, swerving to the left, but the Volkswagen swerved in the same direction. There was a head-on collision. Pushta Krishna's head hit the windshield, cracking the glass. The driver's head also slammed against the glass, and his face was covered with blood. In the back seat, Srila Prabhupada remained seated, his face set gravely. Brahmananda, in shock, suddenly embraced Prabhupada as if to protect him, although the danger had already passed. Brahmananda then jumped out of the car to try and flag down a motorist, and Pushta Krishna got out and opened the back door, where he found Srila Prabhupada with his face bruised, his leg bleeding, and the pieces of glass scattered at his feet. Prabhupada didn't speak or indicate how he felt. Suddenly, Pushta Krishna realized that the car, disabled on a curve, was a dangerous position. So he joined Ramananda in the road to caution motorists to try to get someone to stop. The Citroen and Volkswagen were totaled, and the man and woman in the Volkswagen were both injured. Motorists soon stopped, and when the injured person had received help, Prabhupada and the devotees got into a car and rode back to the temple. Harikesh was waiting anxiously, wondering why Srila Prabhupada was so late when suddenly Prabhupada entered, walking very stiffly, saying nothing. When Harikesh saw all three were injured, he cried out, "My God, what happened? What happened?" But Srila Prabhupada just walked to his quarters and sat down silent. A devotee brought bandages for the obvious injuries, Prabhupada's chin, hand, and leg, and Pushta Krishna and Brahmananda's heads. Srila Prabhupada had said nothing since the accident. Finally, he spoke. Asanapi kleshada ashadeha. As he translated, as soon as you accept this material body, there are so many difficulties. We were sitting peacefully in the car, and the next moment, crash. He talked briefly about the collision, and Brahmananda Swami told how just before the accident, Prabhupada had braced himself with his cane, preventing perhaps more serious injuries. Get some raisin and turmeric, Prabhupada said. Mix it together with a bit of lye and heat it. Prabhupada was again speaking Bhagavad philosophy and practical medical remedies. It remained a frightening event, however, and Prabhupada asked the devotees to have kirtan. Krishna had saved them, he said, considering that both cars had been destroyed, the injuries were negligible. Prabhupada sat like a battle hero, anointed in three places with yellow poultice, while Sri Harikesh read aloud from Chaitanya Charitamrita, the disappearance of Haridas Thakur. Then Srila Prabhupada began talking about the dangers of traveling, questioning the advisability of his extensive touring. His mission of translating Srimad Bhagavatam and other Vaishnava literatures was too important for him to be risking his life traveling in automobiles. He had been considering a visit to Nairobi before returning to Bombay, but now he said he would cancel his visit. He said he had never wanted to leave Bombay, but because they had made so many arrangements in Africa, he had come. Perhaps the incident was a sign that he should go back to India. The next morning, with Brahmananda Swami and Pushta Krishna Swami hobbling along, Prabhupada went on his morning walk as usual, although he favored his injured knee. As he discussed with his disciples whether he should go to Nairobi or return to India. Again, he discussed with his disciples. Chavana, the president of ISKCON Nairobi, argued that Prabhupada should go to Nairobi. The devotees there were expecting it, he said, and they had made arrangements. If Prabhupada cancelled now, he would probably not come back for a long time. Others, however, argued that there was no question of asking Srila Prabhupada to keep going now after this traumatic accident. He should go directly to Bombay. Prabhupada heard both opinions, but he was more affected by the consideration of disappointing the devotees in Nairobi than of recuperating after the accident. He decided to go to Nairobi. But only after a few days in Nairobi, Prabhupada became anxious to return to India. Reports were reaching him about mismanagement in Bombay and about building materials being stolen from the property through a conspiracy involving the workers, the storekeeper, and the chowkidars. When Srila Prabhupada heard about this, he became so morose he stopped translating. He even stopped eating. Although thousands of miles from Bombay, he was feeling the pain more than any of the devotees there. Many of them, in fact, were not even aware that the theft was taking place. When Brahmananda Swami asked Prabhupada why he wasn't eating, he replied, "How can I eat when my money is being stolen?" Bombay, November 1st. Srila Prabhupada's plane from Nairobi arrived in Bombay at 1 a.m. Yet, even at such an early hour, he was greeted at the temple by a gathering of intimate life members, disciples, and even some of the tenants on the land. When the group followed him to his room, he confided that he had a serious accident and he even showed them the scar on his knee. He said he was relieved to be back. In a letter from Bombay, he wrote, "The accident was very disastrous, but still Krishna saved. Perhaps I may stay here for some time for finishing our temple construction on this land." ISKCON Bombay was Srila Prabhupada's office, and he immediately got to work. He fired the engineer who he held responsible for the poor, slow work and stolen building materials. At first, Prabhupada had tried to avoid hiring a construction company by having Surabhi oversee the whole project, assigning work to various subcontractors. But that wasn't working. Srila Prabhupada wanted to change, but there was no clear alternative. "We have come to Krishna consciousness for a life of eternal bliss," he said to Surabhi. "But instead of eternal bliss, I'm suffering eternal anxiety." He appealed to Surabhi, Giriraj, and others to do something. One day, a life member, a construction engineer, visited the site and told Srila Prabhupada the temple and the hotel could easily be completed in 6 months. Prabhupada then berated Surabhi, who said that 6 months' time was not enough. "Now I'm nowhere," thought Surabhi. "I'm losing my service." Then another life member, Mr. Omkar Prakash, directed the chief engineer with ECC, one of India's largest, most reputable construction companies, came to the Sunday feast and examined the work. Appalled at the poor quality, he said that after 2 or 3 years it would fall apart. Giriraj, impressed with the idea of hiring Bombay's biggest, most competent construction firm, spoke with Prabhupada, who was also interested. At first, Surabhi resented that the work was being taken out of his hands, but after meeting with Mr. Dheer, he also liked the proposed change. The contract was made with ECC, and Mr. Dheer presented a progress chart detailing each phase of the work and showing when it would be completed. Srila Prabhupada was pleased with the professional methods despite the higher cost. Now the work would be done as professionally and as quickly as possible, and that was what mattered most. Prabhupada stayed for the greater part of November, and the construction progressed quickly. There was no question of cutting corners to save a little money. Prabhupada explained to Surabhi. The temple had to be a beautiful jewel so that people from all over India would want to come and stay. During the Vrindavan construction, Prabhupada had emphasized, "Why so much? Why not just simple?" But now he was stressing, "Why not more? The temple should be opulent and ornate with marble everywhere. The hotel should be the finest with beautifully furnished rooms and an elegant restaurant. And the air-conditioned theater building should be one of the big in Bombay." "Why not marble on the floors?" asked Prabhupada, speaking of the hotel rooms. "It's going to be very expensive," said Surabhi. "Don't worry about the money," Prabhupada said. "Can we put marble on the floor? Then do it." Surabhi did it, but tried to save money by putting a cheaper stone in the hotel hallways. When Prabhupada saw it, he was displeased. "It should have been all marble," he said. Funds for the Bombay construction came primarily from the sale of books in America, and Srila Prabhupada was regularly receiving reports. On October 18th, Rameshwar sent a telegram with some of the good news. 1 million copies of BTG just printed. Devotees gone wild. Promised to distribute all within 1 month. Spanish Gita just off the press, bringing hundreds of millions to your lotus feet. All possible by your mercy only. When the temple president from ISKCON, Denver, wrote about starting a jewelry business, Srila Prabhupada wrote back disapproving. "Why are they doing business? This creates a bad atmosphere." We shall only do one business, that is book selling. That's all. As soon as you become karmis after business, then spiritual life becomes damaged. This business should not be encouraged anymore. Doing business and not Sankirtan. This is not at all good. Sankirtan is very good, but Grihasthas, under condition, can do other business only if they give at least 50%. But Sankirtan is the best business. Prabhupada envisioned that book distribution could not only finance Bombay construction, but also support his even more ambitious plans for Mayapur. Book distribution was good business, and it was the best preaching. It was Prabhupada's formula, American money combined with India's spiritual culture, and he encouraged Rameshwar to motivate the Sankirtan in the US in accordance with this principle. America has the money, so this is cooperation between the blind and lame man. It will make good relations between India and America. The next chance I have for meeting with Indira Gandhi, I shall inform her about how foreign exchange we are sending, how much foreign exchange we are sending. After receiving your encouraging assurance that as book distribution increases, the amount BBD sends will also increase. We are now going to attempt a Kurukshetra project and the Jagannath Puri project. For the time being, we are spending in India, but eventually we'll spend everywhere. That will greatly enhance the America's spiritual position. Always remain dependent on Guru and Krishna, and your progress will be assured. Chapter 49, India Unifying ISKCON. During 1975, Śrila Prabhupada increasingly referred management problems to the GBC, specifically to the annual GBC meeting in Mayapur. From the beginning of ISKCON, he had been saying, it's not one man's work. He had created the governing body commission to relieve himself of the staggering burden of personally managing his growing world organization. Always remember, he had written to a GBC member, and your task is very great. Prabhupada saw the progress of his movement as a wonderfully successful phenomenon, proof of the direct mercy of Lord Chaitanya upon his humble efforts. ISKCON was his service to his Guru Maharaj, and now his disciples should maintain it and increase it as the service to their spiritual master. He said he wanted to see 108 flourishing temples before his departure from the world. Keeping those temples alive was to be the work of his sincere followers. He wrote to the GBC representatives for Australia. All temples in Melbourne, London, Paris, Bombay, all are very nice. Everything is very bright and brilliant. The deity is proof of the sincere service. It is the duty of the GBC now to maintain this. The duty is to enthuse them and maintain. Problems were inevitable for a preacher of Krishna consciousness. Many sadhus therefore preferred to remain in a holy dham without preaching. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and the great acharyas in the sampradaya of Lord Chaitanya had been concerned with offering the Lord's devotional service to as many conditioned souls as possible. Yet to take up this path, one would have to be tolerant. Financial needs, national and local government restrictions, ignorant and demoniac enemies of pure devotion to the Lord, envy, personal ambition, and disagreements among neophyte devotees, struggles and fall downs in the attempt to avoid illicit sex and intoxication. All these and many more problems complicated the preacher's mission, even to save just one fallen soul from the cycle of birth and death. Prabhupada wanted his more advanced disciples to share the struggle with him. And when he saw competence and sincerity in some of his senior members, he tried to turn affairs over to them and concentrate more on his life's mission of presenting all 12 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. Always the devotees were enthusiastically pressing Prabhupada to translate and write more books so that they could read them and distribute them. Srila Prabhupada replied that he was trying his best, but the task was not mechanical. Great concentration and peace of mind were required. He could not write while at the same time being besieged by dozens of threatening, complicated issues. When the GBC member responsible for Gurukul wrote Srila Prabhupada with a plan that all ISKCON centers should support the educational system, Prabhupada replied, as far as taxing the centers for maintenance, that should be considered amongst the GBC. When a controversy arose in the Stockholm Center and devotees appealed to Prabhupada for a judgment, he replied, this must be considered at a full meeting of the GBC. And he added, all of our students will have to become guru, but they are not qualified. Srila Prabhupada said that sexual attraction, making unnecessary changes, and fighting among God brothers were all Western disease. Krishna consciousness was the path of perfection, and if his disciples stayed persistently and sincerely on the path, they could certainly succeed. Sometimes, however, Prabhupada saw the Western disease overcoming his disciples, and even the GBC members would seem unable to stop it. Yet, unless they spared him from such headaches, how could he do the higher work? GBC, he said, must mean that they, by his managing, there are not any complaints so that I can be relieved to do the translation work. He had expounded on this principle in the fourth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. When the disciple is grown up and are able to preach, the spiritual master should retire and sit down in a solitary place to write and execute Nirjan Bhajan. This means sitting silently in a solitary place and executing devotional service. The devotees of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness now render service as preachers in various parts of the world. Now they can allow their spiritual master to retire from active preaching work. In the last stage of the spiritual master's life, the devotees of the spiritual master should take preaching activities into their own hands. But it was like trying to control the wind. When the difficulties mounted, the devotees would run to him like children running to their father. Sometimes a disciple would simultaneously ask him to write his books and then drop a serious problem in his lap. One of the leaders in America reported to him that some devotees were not following the principles, but that Srila Prabhupada should please stay in India and continue writing peacefully. Prabhupada wrote back, if the old habits come back, then everything is finished. If my mind becomes disturbed in this way, then how can I concentrate on book writing? It is not possible. Better not inform me anything and let me sit in Vrindavan. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada uttered the phrase, let me sit in Vrindavan, as if to give up managing the whole problematic society. Everyone knew he would never leave ISKCON. He had already sacrificed his life to save the world by leading the Krishna consciousness movement. But when would his disciples mature? Srila Prabhupada wrote, I want that the GBC relieve me of all management, which means they have to manage the way I manage. And often he would say, do as I'm doing. When controversies and disagreements among GBC secretaries came before him, he would refer them to the GBC body. I appointed GBC for peaceful management of affairs, and now you're creating disturbances among yourselves. So how can I be peaceful to translate my work? So all these things should be kept in abeyance for the time being. And when we meet in Mayapur, we can discuss among the entire GBC the spiritual sky questions and the other questions of this nature. We'll simply have to wait until we discuss it in Mayapur. Srila Prabhupada continued to hold the GBC responsible for settling the affairs of ISKCON. For better or worse, he wanted all his disciples to accept the GBC as their authority, and he trusted that when the GBC members all met together, working under his guidance, they could solve the problems. But whether they could actually spare him, allowing him to peacefully write his books, seemed doubtful. During 1975, a controversy arose among some of the ISKCON members, including some of the GBC members, as to whether Grihastha devotees, married men, could actually be spiritual leaders in ISKCON. Although the Krishna consciousness philosophy clearly explained that any devotee, regardless of his ashram, could become qualified and purified, the controversy grew. In September, a sannyasi GBC member flew from the US to Vrindavan just to suggest to Prabhupada that another GBC member, a Grihastha, was not qualified to lead. Śrila Prabhupada, however, said that the matter could be settled at the annual GBC meeting. But when the next day a letter came from Rameshwar supplicating Prabhupada to continue his translating work, Prabhupada replied that he was prepared to at his writing. But when one leader flies 10,000 miles to lodge a complaint against another, then what can I do? If you all leaders cannot work together, then how can you expect the others to cooperate with you? Differences may be there, but still you have to cooperate together. Otherwise, where is the question of my being relieved of so many problems and decisions? As the third annual International Build Festival approached, the long-standing problems of various discontent parties awaited settlement in the court of the GBC. Srila Prabhupada would be arriving in Mayapur on January 17th, almost 2 months before the GBC meetings and the gathering of devotees. With perhaps 1,000 devotees attending, there will be blissful kirtan classes and the parikramas, and there would be problems. Prabhupada made it clear that the proper way of settling the controversies was not by gossiping about them, not by pressing him for a ruling, but by trusting in the GBC. Prabhupada himself would stand by the decisions of the GBC, or if necessary, correct them. And so, sincere followers should not hesitate to follow. At the Mayapur meeting, whatever we have decided, that is good for 1 year. So if anything has to be done, it will be decided by majority decision of the GBC. I do not wish to give any decision without the GBC's verdict. My only grievance is that I appointed GBC to give me relief from the management. But on the contrary, complaints and counter complaints are coming to me. Then how my brain can be peaceful? So best thing is we wait for the Mayapur meeting and decide there combinedly what to do. If there are any discrepancies that will be discussed at the GBC meeting in Mayapur, how can one man manage the whole world affairs? January 17, 1976. En route Calcutta to Mayapur, Prabhupada stopped at the mango grove and took breakfast, fruit, vada, nuts, and sweets. Even before reaching Mayapur, he was enjoying the peaceful atmosphere of the Bengal countryside. Soon he would be at the Mayapur Chandrodaya Mandir, his special place of worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. More than 50 adult devotees and 30 young Bengali Gurukul boys were waiting for Srila Prabhupada at the gate. For the first time, Prabhupada beheld the large entrance dome recently built over the gate. A thick 25 flower garland stretched over the gateway, and before it stood Bhavananda Goswami, holding a small silk cushion on which resting a pair of scissors. Stepping out of the car into the bright sunlight, Prabhupada took the scissors and cut the garland, sanctifying the gate. Prabhupada smiled. Everyone cheered as the gate swung open and Prabhupada entered, followed by the ecstatic Kirtan party. As Prabhupada walked towards the temple of Radha Madhav, everywhere he looked, he saw blossoming flowers. clay pots of burning frankincense billowed fragrant smoke, and women stood on the second floor veranda offering showers of rose petals as Prabhupada walked. The main building was decorated beautifully. Walking beneath an orange silk umbrella, and the devotees and exuberant kirtan of the holy name, he appeared regal and triumphant. Inside the temple, where dozens of garlands hung from the ceilings, Prabhupada came before the golden forms of Radha Madhav and offered prostrated obeisances. He felt he was in Vaikuntha because of the arrangements of the devotees had made. He said Krishna was smiling. Later that day, as Prabhupada was taking his massage, his servant, Harisori, suggested that this would be a good place for retirement. Either Vrindavan or Mayapur, Prabhupada replied, no other place. That is sure. In the afternoon, Prabhupada inspected the grounds and buildings. He was pleased at the spaciousness of the Prasadam hall. Built to seat 12,000, he remarked, and that its size reminded him of the Bombay railway station. But when he found that the steps to the kitchen dirty, he criticized strongly. One of the devotees explained that it was usually clean, but the devotee who always did it was chanting his japa. You are chanting japa, said Prabhupada, and it has not been clean for 300 years. Clean first and then japa. Under the plea of japa, you are simply dozing. He said that anyone who finds a situation affected by the mode of ignorance but does not act to correct it as being affected by the mode of ignorance. Srila Prabhupada walked down to the bank of the Jalangi and to see the boat the devotees were using for traveling from village to village. On board, he praised the simple life of traveling and preaching. He also went to the Goshala, where the Srila Prabhupada walked to the bank of the Jalangi to see the boats that the devotees were using for traveling from village to village. On board, he praised the simple life of traveling and preaching. He also went to the Goshala and saw the cows, and he drank a cup of the first sugarcane juice of the season from the cane grown on the ISKCON land. As Srila Prabhupada walked through the fields to the post site of the Mayapur city, Surabhi described where various buildings could be located. Prabhupada suggested they present their plan to West Bengal government officials and asked them to provide the necessary land. Srila Prabhupada continued to meditate on the Mayapur and a few days later, he composed a letter to the Chief Secretary of West Bengal asking for help in acquiring land. ISKCON should not be misunderstood as a sectarian religious institution, he informed the Chief Secretary. Krishna's instruction in Bhagavad Gita, beginning with we are not the body, were scientific, and he did not belong to any particular religion. Prabhupada also asserted that ISKCON programs, especially the one contemplated for Mayapur, would solve national and international problems through spiritual education. He mentioned features that would be practically appealing to the chief secretary, such as the investment of foreign capital in the projects, the flow of tourists who would come to Mayapur, and the hiring of thousands of local workers for construction and maintaining the city. His description of the project was fascinating. Centered around a cultural exposition building, the total village communal development will unfold. This cultural exposition building is the first phase of many phased plan. It will feature the world's largest planetarium entitled the Temple of Understanding. This structure would be over 30 stories high and will house exhibits depicting all the levels of universal existence. and all varieties of living conditions, and all the planetary systems in exact detail through lights, models, diorama, and murals. There will also be daily scheduled exhibits and tours for the public, even a moving escalator, not taking to the public to the upper levels of the exhibition building. The planetarium's exhibits on various levels of existence in this world be and beyond will be based on the scientific structure of findings in the Vedic literature, especially the Srimad Bhagavatam. This temple of understanding shall be surrounded by beautiful pathways, entrances, gardens, and water reservoirs. Four-storied building, 1,000 feet long, will stand in the perimeter of the central area of all four sides. Therefore, it can be used for teaching general and specialized branches of education from primary level to the postgraduate level. In his letter, Srila Prabhupada referred to the difficulties in purchasing land for ISKCON's projects, but since all the local landowners were escalating their price far beyond the market value. If the government could make the land available for market prices, then ISKCON could immediately start its important work, officially inaugurating it on the birthday anniversary of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, March 16, 1976. In the meantime, Prabhupada was trying on his own to acquire enough land to begin. The Mayapur city project would require extensive funding and many years of work to develop, but it would proclaim the glories of Lord Chaitanya with unlimited potency. Mayapur would become famous, drawing the people from all over the world and to see the unique modern application of the timeless Vedic wisdom. Prabhupada explained to his disciples that although a sannyasi traditionally does not involve himself with money, the devotee's desire is to unite Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, represented by wealth, with Narayan, God. He said that there was truth to the common saying, no one listens to a poor man. And were he to advertise A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami discoursing in an empty field in Mayapur, no one would come. Westerners, especially, should be able to hear about Krishna in a comfortable, attractive setting. Prabhupada planned, therefore, that visitors to ISKCON's transcendental city be well accommodated. Gradually, the world would be deeply affected by the dynamic demonstration of the artistic, philosophical, and humanitarian aspects of Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada asked Surabhi to draw a master plan for Mayapur city. Staying up all night, Surabhi had a preliminary architectural sketch showing specific areas of the city for Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. The sketch also showed temples, schools, streets, walkways, resident buildings, cottages, a stadium, and an airport, as well as self-sufficiency features like windmills, irrigation systems, and agricultural fields. Prabhupada was taking his massage and Surabhi brought him the drawing. Prabhupada's golden body was glistening with mustard oil as Hari Sauri carefully, strongly massaged his head, chest, back, and limbs. Prabhupada was relaxed and silent, his eyes closed in meditation. But when Surabhi entered with the drawing of Mayapur, he became animated. Prabhupada liked the drawing and talked about it for an hour. Now, Surabhi should make a formal drawing and approach professional architects and appropriate government agencies. The devotees coming to Mayapur should also see it as a fabulous and far reaching as it was. The Mayapur city should now become a reality. As the festival drew nearer, some of the sannyasis arrived hoping to associate more intimately with Srila Prabhupada before the flood of devotees began, a major topic of discussion among the sannyasis was the controversy over the role of grihastha men in ISKCON now, and the influence of women and children on the sannyasis and brahmacharis, those in the renounced order. Some of the sannyasis were suggesting that ISKCON should be more structured to separate the renounced orders and the preachers from the householders. They began airing their views before Śrila Prabhupada, who then guided them. On the next morning walk, Jayapataka Swami inquired about the standards required for a man before a man could take sannyas. To become sannyasi, Prabhupada replied, the other three processes are there to become a brahmachari, to become grihastha, and to become vanaprastha, stage by stage. But if one is able, he can take sannyas. And that the competency is also very simple. If you become fully Krishna conscious, then you can immediately become competent. The Brahmana, Bhuyaya Kalpate, as soon as you fully engage yourself in Krishna consciousness, then immediately you can become more than a sannyasi. Harisori. A grihastha inquired whether artificially accepting the renounced order could actually be indulging in another form of sense gratification. As soon as we manufacture something, Prabhupada replied, there is sense gratification. Then when you offer, then when you think, I want to offer my desire, that's all, that is sense gratification. It may be that I sit down under a tree and I sit down in a palace. The basic principle is sense gratification. The other day, I was talking about Kira Chora and Kira Chor. Kira Chor means diamond and Kira means cucumber. One was thinking, I shall steal one cucumber, and the other thinks, if I steal, I shall steal the diamond. But the stealing propensity is there. One may think that I'm only stealing the cucumber, and it is very dangerous, but in the eyes of the land, both are criminal. So if we manufacture a concoction, yes, I've got a stealing propensity, but I shall not steal a diamond. Let's steal Kira. That's the only mental concoction. This is only mental concoction, but he is a thief. Jayapataka Swami. So is Grihastha life and Krishna consciousness allowing us to steal Kira? Prabhupada said, yes, Kira Chor. The prostitute hunter is Kira Chor, and the householder is Kira Chor. That's all. Also, Harisori inquired whether artificial renunciation with sense gratification was sense gratification. There is different views among the disciples, and they wanted Prabhupada to make it very clear so that one party could not take a quote from Prabhupada and claim it as universal. Renunciation is not artificial, said Prabhupada. It is a process. We have to give up this sense gratification. So through a process to turn, like sometimes in a health club, there is sense gratification. Swimming, is it not? Artificial swimming is not actual swimming, but it is to practice Dhananda. But sometimes people who renounce, they become very proud. What is that? Prabhupada continued to reply that renunciation had to be actually practiced. Everyone must attend the Mangalarti, he said. One must attend this, otherwise no prasadam. If you're too sick, then also you should not eat. There should not be sleeping at the time of Mangalarti because he says he's sick. Then at the time of prasadam, voracious eating. If the devotees were looking for Prabhupada to make an absolute distinction between Grihastha and Sannyas, it was not there. He emphasized rather the actual quality and the practice of the individual devotee. On another morning walk, Hridayananda Goswami told Prabhupada of the sannyasas discussion. Hridayananda, we were thinking that it would be nice to have the city centers for the preachers. And the women and children, it's much easier to maintain them on our farms. There they can do a little work and produce their own food. Prabhupada, yes, in the farms they can live and do some handwork. Guru Kripa Swami, they wouldn't do it though, Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada, then you don't allow. If they don't follow the rules and regulations, then what is the use? Another sannyasi said that when many householders come together in big communities, an atmosphere of laziness developed. Whereas when lots of brahmacharis were preaching together, it was more enlivening. Prabhupada, anyway, everyone should be engaged. That's all. No idle life. Never encourage laziness. If you maintain some lazy men, then everything will be spoiled. Devotees, I heard Srila Prabhupada that you remarked our society is not a love-making society. But these things are going on. Referring to an inappropriety of two of his disciples, Prabhupada replied, yes, I have seen in Vrindavan. Other complaints arose. One leader argued that temples should not have to carry the burden of maintaining women with children but no husbands. Another complaint was that brahmacharis, by selling books, were were in effect supporting the householders. Prabhupada continued to reply in a philosophical and practical way that whatever discrepancies were present should be rectified. Sense gratification, laziness, and failure to attend the temple programs should not be tolerated. But this condemnation of malpractice in devotional service did not fall exclusively on any particular group. Prabhuji, you want to read? Yeah. So we have to start from shortly after his arrival in Mayapur.
Okay. I think this mic is charging is getting over.
You can change it.
Okay. Maxi, it is 3 o'clock. Okay. Uh, Shortly after his arrival in Mayapur,
It's very soon. It's okay. Good night.
shortly after his arrival in Mayapur, Prabhupada had addressed a similar issue in his own correspondence. Mr. Chatterjee had written from Calcutta to say that he was preaching worship of Lord Chaitanya and was eager to show Srila Prabhupada some articles he had written. Mr. Chatterjee stated, my theme is we can get to see our God, Gauranga, by taking sannyasa. Those who are grihasthas reach to Godhead through Nam Sankirtana. Srila Prabhupada encouraged the man with a reply. Your theme is okay. There were many devotees of Lord Chaitanya like Advaita Acharya and even Lord Nityananda who were grihasthas. Lord Chaitanya left his grihastha life. It is a matter of understanding Krishna. That is the real qualification. Whether one is grihastha or sannyasi, how well he knows Krishna. Srila Narottama Das Thakur has sung Grihe Vavane Tathake He Gauranga Bole Dake. Lord Chaitanya says, Kiba Vipra Kiba Nyasi Shudra Keranaya Yei Krishna Tattva Vedta Sei Guru Haya. So please come and we shall discuss your articles. It doesn't matter whether one is living at home or in the forest. As long as he is chanting the name of Lord Chaitanya, he is a Vaishnava. Whether one is a Brahmana, a sannyasi, or Shudra, regardless of what he is, he can become a spiritual master if he knows the signs of Krishna. CC Madhya 8.128. While sitting relaxed in his room, Srila Prabhupada had his temporary secretary Dayananda read him some recent mail. One letter was from a temple president having difficulty managing the devotees, and Prabhupada had Dayananda summarize the letter's point. He says, said Dayananda, that the devotees aren't behaving, and so he's criticizing, but they are not accepting. Simply, criticism is not our means, said Prabhupada. Our means is to show by example. Dayananda made a note of it to use in typing Prabhupada's reply. Now, Srila Prabhupada, Dayananda continued. He is inquiring about his household life. This is not the business of the Guru, said Prabhupada. How to increase sex life and family life. They are not happy, these Western men and women. They become married, but they are not happy. Therefore, I recommend Brahmacharya and Sannyasa life. Several other devotees were also in the room with Prabhupada and Jagat Guru. A brahmachari spoke up. Because they have no training, that's why they have so many problems. Whatever it may be, said Prabhupada, but they are not happy. Therefore, I recommend Brahmacharya and Sannyasa. Srila Prabhupada had already been disturbed by what he saw as a loose husband-wife situation in Vrindavana. Now, hearing this letter from a householder who was improperly inquiring about his family life, he again turned his attention to Vrindavana and asked to see his GBC for Vrindavana, Gopala Krishna, who had recently arrived in Mayapur. It is not a free hotel for love making, Prabhupada began. Even before Gopal Krishna entered the room, Vrindavana is not a joking place. They must be serious for Krishna, and I shall give them everything. Don't worry about money, but manage. There is no scarcity of money. There is scarcity of management. Why so many children in the temple? It is not simply a place of husbandless women. Children should always be engaged, so they shouldn't create a disturbance all over. Srila Prabhupada said that if the mothers were irresponsible and only wanted to take care of their own children, then they should be sent away from Vrindavana. Two women could run a nursery and take care of many children, and the other woman could work, not go to the roof and love making, said Prabhupada, and make a plan and go away. He stressed that since all India came to Vrindavana, ISKCON's center should be ideal in every respect. Otherwise, people would think that his disciples were hippies and no one would come. A good example of responsible care for children was in Mayapur, where a Gurukula had already been organized. Children are welcome, said Prabhupada, but make them jewels, not spoiled children. Varna Shankara hippies. For the sannyasis in Mayapur, Prabhupada's heavy words about irresponsible grihastha life fueled their own arrangements. A few of them felt that grihasthas should not even live in the temples. That evening, when the sannyasis gathered in Prabhupada's room, they discussed with him the position of families and children in ISKCON. One sannyasi reported not being allowed to preach in certain temples because he was against marriage and favored brahmachari life. Others complained that expensive properties were being purchased to be used mostly as residences. The preaching was suffering, they said, and brahmacharis were being told to get married if they felt sexually agitated. Prabhupada felt the heavy force of sannyasis' protest and he could perceive the antagonism between the ashramas. These things must be decided by the GBC, he said, and no one could go against their decisions. But he also expressed sympathy for what the sannyasis were saying. Families, he suggested, could serve in a farm communities and live self-sufficiently in Krishna consciousness. Our whole preaching program is detachment from material life, said Prabhupada, to stop sex life altogether. Grihastha is a concession for those who cannot give it up immediately. Otherwise, marriage is not required. It is simply burdensome. legal or illegal. The after effects of sex simply mean difficulty. March 7th, the GBC members assembled. The process was to make an agenda, discuss each issue, and then pass resolutions by voting. At the end of the day, they would go to Śrila Prabhupada in his room and read the day's resolutions for his approval or amendment. The first day, they spent mostly in assigning zones and duties for each GBC member. They reported these results to Srila Prabhupada and he approved them. Prabhupada also addressed the issue of Grihastha and Sannyasa life, saying that all the devotees should become attached to Krishna's family, not to the stool family or pig family. Sannyasa life meant rejection of false family, but not the family of Krishna consciousness. The Krishna consciousness society was based on renunciation, said Prabhupada, and therefore all sincere devotees were as good as sannyasis. The actual dress didn't matter, whether white or saffron. Although an ideal grihastha should eventually come to the stage of formal sannyasa, he said that all grihastha men traditionally wear white. Brahmacharya saffron. Discuss in the GBC, he said, and make a decision. Question and put to vote. But if you make Brahmachari party, Grihastha party, Sannyasa party, it will be finished. Everything should be done very openly. We have to work for Krishna. Why this whispering? It is not very good. The next morning, while Srila Prabhupada was on his walk around the Mayapur fields, the GBC vice chairman Madhu Madhudvisha Swami asked for guidance in preparation for the GBC meeting that day. Madhudvisha, the subjects that we are going to be discussing today in the GBC meeting are about the role of sannyasis and brahmacharis and grihasthas in ISKCON. In the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, in one of your purports, you say that a sannyasi should never discourage a young man from getting married. But on the other hand, we understand that a sannyasi should encourage young men to remain brahmachari. So it means to me like there's some kind of contradiction. Prabhupada, according to time and circumstance, just like Krishna says, Niyatam Kuru Karma Tvam. Always be engaged in your prescribed work. And at last he says, Sarva Dharma Parityajya Mamikam Sharanam Raja. So now you adjust. That is not a contradiction. It is just suitable to the time and circumstance. Give up all prescribed duty and surrender unto me. Bhagavad Gita 18.66. Madhudvisha. But is there some conclusion? Prabhupada. The real aim is that you have to become the eternal servant of Krishna. Either you go through karma or gnana or yoga, it doesn't matter. The ultimate aim is how to reach Krishna. Arjuna achieved the favor by Krishna by fighting and killing Hare Krishna. Prabhupada said no more. He had created the GBC to deal with just such problems, and he had instructed his GBC men personally in letters and in his books. Now they would have to apply those instructions according to time and place. The GBC met, discussed all day, and by evening had a list of resolutions pertaining to the division of ashrama in ISKCON. Husbandless women with children could not live in ISKCON temples. Husband and wife could not live in ISKCON temples, even if separately. Before entering marriage, devotees should have a means of supporting themselves and not expect to live off ISKCON. Upon getting married, a householder would be financially responsible for his wife until such time as he took sannyasa. Reading the resolutions to Prabhupada in his room usually evoked little verbal response from him. His practice was generally to nod in approval. or occasionally to comment. But when he heard the resolution that husbandless women with children could not stay in temples, he uttered a thoughtful, hmm. Then he said, as for me, my only concern is that they should not waste their valuable human life. He was speaking not in the tone of the official head of society, who could veto resolutions, but in very personal, humble way, as a pure devotee. After so much struggle, he said, they have got this human form, and I do not want them, they should miss the opportunity. As for me, I cannot discriminate man, woman, child, rich, poor, educated, or foolish. Let them all come, and let them take Krishna consciousness that they will not waste their human life, so that they will not waste their life. Although the GBC members usually had plenty to say, after these remarks from Prabhupada, they remained silent. Finally, Tamal Krishna Goswami, the elected GBC chairman for the years, spoke. Yes, Srila Prabhupada, he said, so we will strike that resolution. Prabhupada also disapproved the resolution that a householder would have to give financial support for his wife for the rest of his life until he took sannyasa. You each be guru, he said, as I have 5,000 disciples or 10,000, so you have 10,000 each. In this way, create branches and branches of Chaitanya tree. But you have to be spiritually strong. This means chanting your rounds and following the four rules. It is not an artificial show. It is not a material thing. Chant and follow the four rules and pray to Krishna in helplessness. We have to have enthusiasm. If we lose our enthusiasm, everything will become slack. In old age, I came out from Vrindavana. I had no money, nothing, but I thought, let me try. Bhagwan spoke out spontaneously. You are still enthusiastic, Srila Prabhupada. Yes, Prabhupada smiled. I am enthusiastic. I don't think I'm an old man. Sometimes we think we're old, said Bhagwan. No one is old, said Prabhupada. Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. Sometimes in old age one is pushed down, but I am enthusiastic. The soul is not destroyed with the destruction of the body. Bhagavad Gita 2.20. Prabhupada said he was pleased at most of the resolutions because they indicated that a strong GBC was now ready to relieve him so he could concentrate on his translation work. He said that the devotees would have to strictly follow for the entire year what the GBC has agreed on. There should be no changes unless he approved. And at the next annual meeting, they could make any changes necessary. The GBC chairman then called for a vote on an unresolved topic from the day's meeting. The topic had been discussed, but since it had not been approved, the chairman called for a vote. Everyone voted yes by raising their right hand. Then Srila Prabhupada raised his hand also. His disciples immediately laughed at the endearing gesture. Yes, Prabhupada said, I am simply following the GBC. Whatever you say, I have to follow. When the temple presidents heard about the GBC resolution, many objected. They knew Prabhupada had approved them, but they thought